Hello and welcome to this edition of A Conversation With. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network, and with us for her annual pilgrimage to cable access, Priscilla Matton, the Superintendent of Bristol County Mosquito Control. Good to see you again.
It's great to be back. Thank you so much.
I called her up on the phone and she said, I've been waiting for your phone call. I'm like, I'm sorry.
That's right.
Although we've been earlier now. The first couple of years, a few years ago, we were doing it later, and now we're doing it, I think, early, which is actually better.
I think so too.
To get the message out. You've already, the city's already sent out their, announcement that you guys are spraying the parks, and so, you guys are busy right now.
Exactly, yes. We've completed our spring larviciding, either by helicopter, plane, or by hand. So now we're moving on to more of the summer activities, which is the adulticiding and the catch basin treatments that we do.
So I know you're year-round, but when do things really start getting going for you in a year? In the wintertime, obviously, things are dormant, but I know you're still doing different things, but when do you really get out there?
Sure, so we start to really ramp up our services about the first week of April. We need water temperatures to be above about 50 degrees so that the mosquitoes are eating the pesticide that we use. We use a larvicide, a BTI, or a Bacillus sphaericus product. They need to consume that. And when the water is too cold, the mosquitoes are just not eating. They might be there, They're just not eating, so they're not really developing, so the product just doesn't work. So it doesn't make sense.
So April is when you start with the...
Yep. And we started this April, and actually it was a little cool. We went out and we were getting ready to start our aerial larvicide that we do in the Hockomock Swamp Complex and in the Bolton Cedar Swamp, which is down right on the Freetown, New Bedford line. And the water temperatures were just a little cool for me to feel confident that the pesticide application would be successful. So we pushed it back a couple of weeks. So we usually aim for the week of school vacation, so
right.
Somewhere around the 20th. But yeah, we'll start larviciding applications. That's when it really kicks off.
It's been weird weather-wise this year because we started out, we had no snow really to speak of. I know there was some events, but no major storms. It was warmer at times, but the spring was kind of cold. But we're still behind in rainfall totals, although every weekend it was raining every weekend. Right. But as you told me off camera, I think it's interesting, that's all well and good, but it was last fall that determines your fate for the following year.
Yes, when it comes to triple E mosquitoes for Eastern equine encephalitis, the mosquitoes that overwinter and live as larvae in the swamps, in those cedar swamps, it's the fall that produces good habitat for them. There's not a lot of water because there's a drought going into September, October, and November. They just don't have great habitat to overwinter. It could dry down, which will kill them off. So what we were seeing was a prediction, right, based on last year and the activity that took place for Triple E in Plymouth County, that this year should be active. But then with the lack of rainfall that we got in the fall, we're seeing extremely low populations, at least in Bristol County, of those mosquitoes that are important for Triple E. So that's great news for us. We're really kind of surprised that that happened, but interesting that something like rain could really impact them quite that significantly.
Well, it's interesting too, like I was telling you off camera, I thought, when you look at the rain totals for last year, it was a normal year, it was a good year actually. We weren't below, because right now, as of July of 2025, we're below average for the year in New Bedford, according to the weather statements that you get from the National Weather Service, which is interesting. But again,
because you're getting those small rain events.
Right, but if you have, if you do have even if you're behind and then all of a sudden you have a wet fall, all the dynamics change.
It does, right. And that's why those are one of the things that we look at, and why surveillance now in the spring, dipping for larvae, looking for them, seeing that the numbers are low, and now that we're using our adult traps and seeing that the numbers are lower. In some cases we're, almost 90% below our 10-year average,
wow.
Which is pretty significant. Last year we had a significant, it was probably our most popular mosquito in the spring of 2024. So we really did expect it to be pretty high for the spring of 2025, but it's just not, at least in Bristol County. So that's a good sign. We're hoping that continues to be the trend for the rest of the season.
And I probably should start too with folks that don't understand. We talk about Triple E, we talk about West Nile virus. tell us a little bit about what's the difference between the two.
Sure. So Eastern equine encephalitis, Triple E, has existed here for many years. We started actually actively surveilling for it in the 50s, and we have data that goes back that far. It's very specific to our red maple white cedar swamps that we have here in Bristol County, Plymouth County, in some areas, right up and down the coast of the United States, the East Coast. So it's kind of specific to our area, and it's different in the sense of how the mosquitoes interact with the specific birds that they use, and that's the difference between those diseases, West Nile virus and Triple E, have a bird cycle. So they all revolve around having a bird involved with amplifying the disease risk in those mosquitoes. That's much different than some of those other diseases we talk about, like the malarias or the dengues or the chikungunya's or the Zika's, right? Those don't have birds. So that's what's really, really different. So it's those cycles that happen in the swamps and in the areas where the bird-mosquito interactions happen. So different for Triple E. Unfortunately, in Massachusetts, Triple E is much more deadly. We tend to have more mortality here than they see in other areas. We don't really know why. We know that the birds migrate up from Florida, where Triple E is active or could be active almost year round, right? Because they don't have much of a winter like we do. Whereas West Nile virus is a container species. It's a Culex mosquito that's involved, and she tends to like that kind of dirty water that you can find in catch basins along the sides of the road, or those plastic stuff that you have around your house, bird baths, gutters, plastic toys, kiddie pools and stuff. That mosquito is different. She overwinters as an adult, and she can overwinter with the virus, with West Nile virus. So West Nile virus has spread across the country since it came into the United States back in '99. And what we see is that a very small portion of the people that get infected with West Nile virus actually display symptoms. So maybe about 10% of the people that are infected with West Nile virus will display symptoms. Those can be similar, like headaches, fever, body aches, and then 1% of them, unfortunately, can develop more significant.
In Eastern equine encephalitis, the Triple E, that affects the brain.
Absolutely.
Right?
They're both encephalitises, so when you get really sick, you can definitely have problems with brain swelling, or you can have seizures and things like that. And yes, both of them have no cure, unfortunately, so it's just sort of supportive care to help you get through. But unfortunately, in our area, Triple E, it doesn't have a great outlook even if you do survive. It tends to be very, very bad for the outcome.
And you said West Nile, some people don't even know they have it.
They don't.
Which is interesting that you can get it and you just move on, I guess.
Exactly, right. Sometimes people will say, oh, I felt like, I had the summer flu, like I was run down, I was fatigued, and that could be, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. So, if you ever have any questions, see your doctor, talk to them. Look at the data that we provide. The Department of Public Health keeps a nice risk map up of where things are happening. And you can kind of see, and the important thing too is the progression, right, through the year, right? So as it gets more and more and more active, that's when people need to make sure that they're taking precautions.
And that's a good thing too. I mean, we're recording this show in July, but the peak is in September, probably, as you said, I think in the past, like mid-September to mid-October, or actually when you get the first freeze, but really those 4 weeks between mid-September and mid-October, because schools are impacted, just any outdoor activities are impacted, and towns and cities take measures to protect the population.
Absolutely, and it's finally maybe our chance to get outside and not 90 degrees all day, right? So we're taking advantage of those cooler evenings, but still warm enough for a mosquito. Mosquitoes will be active in 50-degree temperatures, 55 degrees, 58 degrees, is where we're looking to target when we do our adulticide sprays, but they'll be active about at those temperatures, so those are when we're actually enjoying at the football games or baseball games or soccer games and things that we're doing later in the season. So we're seeing the progression of disease go longer into what we would consider the fall. So certainly important that, come September, you're still taking precautions to prevent mosquito bites.
One of the things, and you talk about the map on Department of Public Health, which is great, but one of the things over the years that we've seen, and I think it's interesting too when people travel, there's basically no county in Massachusetts that is immune to the disease. It used to be southeastern Massachusetts and stuff, but really it's expanded. And you hear about it in New Hampshire, you hear about it in Maine and Vermont. I mean, it really has expanded across New England now, where it wasn't, and I don't know how long ago, but it didn't seem to be that way, say 25 years ago.
Agreed. And something that we're looking into to try to figure out, we think it's the development of the swamps, right? So certainly Hockomock Swamp Complex and some of the other complexes in Plymouth County, they've been here, since they started, right? They've been manipulated a little bit, maybe through putting in a train line. So hydrology changes, people are moving closer to areas that didn't exist, but as the swamps mature, they change, right? And they can make better habitat for the mosquito that's important for Triple E. So I think that that's certainly it. I think the amount of looking, right? If you look for it, you might be able to find it. So testing, better surveillance, looking for the mosquito that's important is very impactful in terms of finding it. But definitely 2019, you might remember, was the worst year we've had of Triple E since we can remember, and there was a significant amount of activity in what we would consider to be like Western Massachusetts, where they've never seen outbreaks like that before.
So do the mosquitoes go there? I mean, do they carry, is it somebody who carries it, or, I mean, how does it go?
Sure, so the mosquitoes exist there anyway, it's the birds that come in. Okay. So as long as there's enough mosquitoes to get the bird activity moving, and our birds can migrate, it's not very far, but certainly an infected bird from Bristol or Plymouth County can fly, just into central Massachusetts and get something going.
And then it just progresses, because I remember, I think it was New Hampshire, there was a fatality up there. I don't know if it was last year or the year before or something like that, and it was just, wow, New Hampshire. That's not something you hear about up there.
Right. And last year in 2024, there was a lot of activity in sort of central Massachusetts, right along the Connecticut border. And Connecticut was having positives, Massachusetts was having positives. So there was a lot of interaction on something that was going on right in that little bit of area.
Has your, I don't want to say your organization because you're Bristol County, but I would assume then that other parts of the state have now developed, like Bristol County Mosquito Control. They have their own now, whereas in the past they didn't.
Right. Certainly we've increased the amount of communities that participate at Central Mass Mosquito Control. That's the name out there, which encompasses a lot of counties. Bristol, Plymouth, we're more county-based in terms of the towns that we service,
right?
Because we service all 20 towns. But out in Western Mass, it's kind of less specific to a county, right, and more specific to the towns. But yes, Pioneer Valley just started doing some more surveillance and stuff because there's been activity out there, and they need to know, more of what's going on. And we can only rely on the Department of Public Health so much, which helps supplement the trapping.
Well, I would imagine that those communities out there, or whether in New Hampshire, they're calling you, and because you've experienced it, we've had it far longer than they have. What are we doing? What do you do?
Right, and when is it time to act? When is it too late to act? What kind of, measures should we put in to help prevent human risk? I think that's always the key, right? Is like, what can we do to prevent human risk? Be proactive, and try not to be as reactive.
Right. We were talking off camera, and I think it's interesting that, because of the drought last year, what kind of year are you expecting this year with the diseases?
Sure. So for Triple E, we've seen less mosquitoes, certainly. We have just passed our peak concern time. So if we detect Eastern equine encephalitis, Triple E, around the 4th of July, it usually predicts a very risky year for human disease because it gives it enough time come August in order to ramp up the virus and get it into those other mosquitoes, our vector mosquitoes. We passed that. We've had no positives for Triple E as of today in July, the beginning of July, so that is a good sign. Our populations are down. So we'll continue to monitor. I do expect at some point we'll pick it up at least a little bit. Hopefully it'll stay in the bird mosquito, the bird biting mosquito that we surveil as opposed to a human biting mosquito. So we'll continue with that. West Nile virus, however, the Culex mosquito that's important for that, their populations are significantly high this year. So that's in the water.
We haven't heard anything yet though.
We got Bristol County got their first positive from collected last week in Swansea. It was just reported yesterday. There's been a West Nile virus in Barnstable County. There's been one around Boston area and stuff. So we've had a few. It's not unusual at this time of year, right? It's not anything to be overly concerned about. This is about typical when we start finding it. But the number of mosquitoes, that's the concerning, right? Because then as it interacts with the birds, gets more birds infected, it can allow those vector mosquitoes that are, less specific. We call them opportunistic. They'll feed on a bird this time and a person the next time, and then another bird and then another person. They have a better potential for turning the disease into a risk factor for humans.
Talk about targeted spraying. I know the city does it every year. They request the assistance, and because we get the announcement, targeted spraying is blank. Put down your windows, but obviously in New Bedford, some people think, well, we're not in a swamp area, but there is targeted spraying done by you folks for the city every year, and I know it's already taking place at this time.
It is. I think it's important because it's always hard. You're right. It's the same way with anything, right? Well, I don't really think I have mosquitoes. I don't have a wetland. There's no vernal pools. Where are they coming from? But they can really develop in such a small amount of water. They're probably right in your backyards. They're certainly in the catch basins. They're certainly in little pools of water that it just exists, that don't have any natural predators like fish or dragonfly larvae or something like that. So you're going to always have mosquitoes. Certainly it's different, a gradient from somebody who lives in northern, New Bedford that could be closer to that Bolton Cedar Swamp in Freetown than somebody who lives, somewhere else in the middle of the city. But unfortunately, because of the way that West Nile virus works, crows are important, birds are important. They all like big stately trees that occur all over the city, right? Especially in cemeteries and stuff. So the disease is right here. We just have to make sure that we're monitoring it properly. So it's definitely different. But the targeted spraying is because this is where the people are, right? This is where you and I are spending our nights, spending our weekends, doing picnics and stuff. So certainly the city wants to make sure that they're helping to protect the residents. But residents can also call us if they would like residential spray done as well.
And as you said, the spraying in the city's Thursdays, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes, for the city's parks, and then Tuesday for residential.
Right. And it's interesting because, here in the South End where we broadcast from, you got the ball field up the street here, the soccer field, Lot 13, which is a multi-use field. That is a field, and I know it gets sprayed every Tuesday, but it's funny, people are like, oh, I'm far South End, but that's exactly the type of area that you're looking to get.
Exactly. So mosquitoes fly, right? They don't necessarily just stay in one place. So while the Culex mosquito flies like a mile, it's not going very, very far, it can certainly move around. So we don't want to ever just say anything that is, north of or south of or west of, is not a concern. We certainly want to make sure that we're taking care of all the areas. Plus with our trapping, we can see and collect data that there's activity here for mosquitoes.
Just for perspective, and I don't think I've ever asked this, how many places do you monitor in New Bedford? Like, is it hundreds or?
No, it's not hundreds. No, we have 5 trap locations.
5 trap locations.
Yep.
All across the city?
Correct.
Basically in each ward when you think about it.
Probably, yeah. We try to be careful not to just monitor based on just populations, because we do want to find the mosquito, right? So it's important that what we're doing is we're looking at the best place to catch it, right? So what we're doing is
near the parks.
We're near the parks,
yeah.
In the cemeteries, right? Where we expect to find the mosquitoes. So it does become a little confusing across the county. We get lots of calls, well, put one in my backyard. I want to know what I have. But it doesn't necessarily matter, right? If the trap is in Dartmouth or if it's in Fairhaven, certainly New Bedford is impacted, because of just the way that the mosquitoes fly and move around.
Right. I think it's good to talk about too is we're about taking steps, and you always talk about the repellents and the things that we can do. Obviously, the long sleeves, long pants are great. It's tough in this weather. I get it. But talk a little bit, I think, for parents, especially with young kids, what repellents can they use and what are you recommending?
So we recommend EPA approved repellents. You can check the CDC website, the Mass Department of Public Health website. They'll provide information. There's information, certainly you must read the label. DEET is the gold standard for repellents. There are many different versions of ways to apply DEET, right? So DEET itself is in the product. You're looking for about 20%. That will give you about 4 hours worth of protection. So depending on what you're going to do, seems a reasonable amount of time. Unless you're camping, you're going to keep needing to reapply. You don't need 100% DEET. You just need, about 20% DEET. You want to make sure you read the label. They come in all different formulations now, right? They have wipes, they have sprays, they have stuff that dries quickly. They have, ones that people might consider to be more oily. So you can look and find something that works best for you. But certainly DEET is the gold standard and the one that's been the most successful. Picaridin, which is made by Cutter, is also effective. And then oil of lemon eucalyptus is a more natural. It's very oily though, so you can't use it on children. So you do need to read the label. But what they want to say when you apply to a child is put it in your hands, spray your hands, and then wipe the children. Don't let them do it themselves.
Well, I think you and I in the past have talked about, you go online and you see some people making concoctions of these things, and if I'm not, you haven't recommended those in the past.
No, we don't. And I know, yes, I get a bunch of people that will come to me with all their own, if I do this or I do that. We just recommend, the CDC and the EPA approved, because these are tested, right? Think about how many people use DEET a year, right? It certainly is one of the most used chemicals, so that they know, what are the side effects, what could you expect to happen, so the safety ratings are there.
Yeah, it's very important too. And as you said, it's usually every 4 hours or whatever. And I know people would just worry about the kids.
Absolutely.
Because they're the ones that are out there, and they probably don't need as much because they're littler than an adult, but you still got to protect them.
You do. And that's the thing too, right, is that a lot of times we might be taking our kids to, let's say, to the playground, or we're watching them in the fall play a sport, right? So they're running around, they're sweaty, all those things are good for mosquitoes. They like the sweat, they like the heat, right? They're attracted. But also you have your other children with you that might be just sitting there doing nothing. Well, they're very good to be eaten on as well. So it's very important just to make sure that the whole family is protected. And just, kind of keep an eye, right? If you're out, you're sitting on your porch, right? And then you're starting to notice that there's mosquitoes around, probably means that your kids are going to get bit too, right? So I think it's just important, like while you're sitting there, be like, maybe I should go in or something.
I know it's not your specialty, but I just wanted to touch on it, and you've always touched on it too, just the tick season as well. Again, that's not your forte per se, but I know you have a basic knowledge and some advice for folks, especially this year. I don't know what kind of year we're expecting as far as the tick season, but it's always a concern, especially when people head out and those that are watching in the suburbs in their communities.
Sure. Anywhere you have small woodland creatures, you can have ticks. And ticks are active as long as there's really not snow on the ground. So as you can tell, we talked about this past winter, right? Tick season can be quite a bit and very long and very active. They're seeing higher than normal tick populations. Board of Health have been reporting more cases of tick-borne diseases this year. Now, that could just be a sign of people being more noticeable, right? We're doing tick checks. Those are very, very important. Make sure you check yourself for ticks, your dogs, your kids, when you come in from being outside. I was somewhere in Maine. I literally walked across the grass, mowed grass at a building at the Department of Health, and I got a dog tick on me. Like, where would it have come from, right? So you just want to be mindful that it can occur anywhere.
Is that weather dependent too?
It can certainly be weather dependent, right? If it's very hot, and sunny and stuff, the ticks are going to maintain their areas in the more moist litter, but certainly, where do we put our kids' play equipment? Right along the edge, right, of your yard, right between where the woods, and the trees are, because it's cooler back there.
Right.
And you really need to have a decent buffer between the end of your manicure yard in the woods, right? You want to have about a 10-foot buffer where just nothing is, right? You want to keep the shrubs down that attracts in white-footed mice, which are important with deer ticks and stuff like that. And you just want to make sure you do a check for ticks. You can also use DEET. DEET works very well at repelling ticks as well, so you can be doing
good,
two as one, right? So maybe you're not thinking of spraying, your shoes/ankles, but you should be, especially if you're going out, if you're on a path, walking, try to stay on that path, try to stay in the middle, keep your pets in the middle.
Any advice for animals?
So tick checks are good.
No, never mind just ticks, but mosquitoes and stuff like that. Do we worry about those?
We should because mosquitoes transmit dog heartworm.
Okay.
So we do. Many of us treat our dogs, our animals for
What do
dog
you
heartworm.
use with that?
So those are those chews that they can get, right? So they're, like with your heartworm, Advantix, all these other things that can protect against the different.
I don't think people think of that at all.
They don't. I know, and that's what people love, right? Who do they love more than anything in the world? Their dogs,
exactly,
right? So they should be careful for dog heartworm, and it does exist here in Massachusetts, as dog owners know.
2 minutes left. I want to give just an opportunity for you to give a final word. And where can we find the information? And if they have calls or questions, emails, where can they get in touch with you?
Sure. So they can call our office at 508-823-5253, extension 1. We take calls between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. and that's to, any questions you have about services, pesticide questions, repellent questions, anything like that. You can also email us your request at requestbristolmcp@comcast.net, and of course you can send an email at any time. You want to include your last name and your full address, including your zip code. Some big towns like New Bedford, Westport, Dartmouth, right? Sometimes we have to split them because we can't get to the whole town in one morning. So it's important to include all your information. We have our website, which is at mass.gov, that they can go to and Google Bristol County Mosquito Control, and keep an eye on the Mass Department of Public Health's website because they do a very nice
they do a job. I mean, if you just keep track, you don't have to do it every day. If you keep track of it once a week.
Right, and if you're traveling,
Yes.
see what's going on, right? What's going on in Plymouth County, what's going on in Central Mass. Google, what's going on. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's been a full show. And lots of good information. It's great seeing you as always. Hopefully the people will take their advice. Hopefully we'll have a good season. And if there's any updates, as always, you're more than welcome to come back and talk about it. If September yields a tough season, just give me a call and we can do it again.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much. That's going to do it for this edition of A Conversation With. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Did you know that you can watch any of New Bedford Cable Network shows anytime, anywhere on all of your mobile devices? How, you may ask? Just log on to nbcablenetwork.com and bam! You have all 3 channels at your fingertips: public, educational, and government access. Here, you can view our program schedules, watch our channel's live broadcasts, or search for a particular program in our vast library of shows. Last year alone, New Bedford Cable Network produced over 500 shows, and nearly all of them are available online at nbcablenetwork.com. Not only can you stay up to date with what's happening in your local government and schools, but also dive into some of New Bedford Cable Network's original award-winning programs. So check us out at nbcablenetwork.com.